Hey everyone, this is Brent, the guy struggling up the stairs. Today's video is about changing out a water heater when it's in a basement or any spot below grade. As a disclaimer, I am not a licensed plumber, but I am a do-it-yourselfer that wants to pass on what he has learned, so it's easier if you're taking on the same task. Let's get going. All right, so this is exciting. I got my brand new Bradford White water heater here, and before I swap it out, I went and checked the dimensions on the one in the basement to make sure the new one's gonna fit. So I checked the dimensions across the hot and the cold here, and I've got about 8 inches. I also checked from where the pressure relief is gonna be to the hot side, and that's about 6 inches. And also checked the diameter from side to side is about 20, and then our height's about 57, which matches everything I've got in the basement. So I think we're good to go. Famous last words. But yeah, it all seems to hook up in the same exact locations. There's Buddy. And I've got the hose run out here, and I get to try a new tool. So I just got this. This is the pump, because as you can see, the water heater is below grade. It's in our partial basement here. So I need to get all the water out of this tank, because there's no way I'm gonna get that thing up full. It's way too heavy. So first thing I had to do was shut off the cold supply, which is right here. So that is now off. So I've got no more water coming into the tank, but the hot side could still allow water to come back down into the tank, which is what I actually want. I want to drain the hot side completely so I don't have water continuing to drip out of this hot flex hose. So what I did is I went up in the house and I opened several of the hot sides on the faucets, so that as I start to drain from the bottom of the tank, the hot lines will also drain out of the house, which will leave me with a dry flex line, so I disconnect it and I'm not dripping all over the place. So I already took off the gas, which you can see here. I've saved all the parts because I plan on reusing it all. This was the drip line. This was the setup for the connection to the actual tank. So the drip line came out right here, and then out the top was the connection to our flex gas hose, and the other end here attached to the gas line. So that reminds me, I didn't mention, obviously I had to turn off the gas. That was actually first. That would be bad if I didn't turn that off, but you would smell it right away. But anyway, gas line is off, water line is off, hot sides and all the faucets are open, so I should be able to drain this thing now. And one last thing, I also made sure that I'm off here at the controller as well. So let's see what happens. So after reading the instructions on this new Milwaukee pump, it says to prime it before putting the battery in or starting it up. So what I'm gonna do is actually just open this right here to allow some of the water to run through the hose, make it to the pump, and get that wet before I start it up. All right, so now that I'm ready to use the transfer pump, all you have to do is you open the battery hatch, put in your battery, make sure it's charged. I've already got the water on over there at the water heater. So water's coming up to this point right here. And I'm gonna try turning it on, see what happens. Go outside, see what happens. Check it out. Got water for days. Look at this. It's hot. Yeah, about as hot as I was expecting. Oh, that's a nasty color. So that was awesome. That took a total of 5 minutes to drain the entire water heater. I mean, I was not expecting it to go quite that fast. I was thinking 10, 15 minutes, but that was amazing. So I had the line from the water heater coming in here. You can see the arrow on the front and the line coming out. So it changed sound, like the tone of the motor changed as it finally got rid of all the water in the tank. And so I turned it off right away. What I was able to do then was shut off the valve on the water heater. So went ahead, and by the way, it's just like a 90-degree turn. That's it. So this is in the off position. If you turn the line in line with the hose, then it's on. So I turned that off. Then I disconnected the end that was attached to the pump. And there was just a couple dribbles coming out, but I wasn't sure if this has a check valve in it, and it does. So even though the hose running up and outside was at a much higher elevation, I thought it was going to just drain as I took the hose off, but it didn't. This stopped the water from coming through. So I was able to disconnect this without a bunch of water running out, then took the whole device upstairs and then took off the other end. And that was it. Worked great. So one other thing I just thought about is trying to get the last little bit of water out of the tank here, and I'd go to open up the valve here and it's just gurgling out, just barely coming out. So I've already shut off the hot water up above. So rather than going back up and opening the hot water again, I just opened the temperature pressure relief valve, and that basically is pulling air through that copper pipe and allowing this thing to drain a lot easier. So now, just to get the last little bit out, and I'll just empty that bucket one or two times. So where I live in California, we have to have earthquake strapping. So I just undid that. It's as simple as undoing this bolt right here and then just flexing it out of the way so that I can reuse it again for the next one, and just putting the nut and the washer back on there so I don't lose it in the meantime. Now that the water heater is fully drained, I'm gonna disconnect the two flex lines right here and here at the top of the water heater. So I just realized that to get that last little bit of water out of here, when I said opening up the temperature pressure relief valve, wasn't really necessary. I could have also just taken off the cold side, which now just creates a wide open gap there to relieve the pressure. So that can do the same thing. Now before I take off the hot side, I had this little piece left over for some landscaping project I'd done in the past that will work well for sealing this fitting. When I go to take that off, I have a feeling there's going to be some residual water left on the hot side. So this will help cap that off. You could make the same thing yourself, just anything that's going to have a cap on it to make sure no excess water is dripping all over the place. So now I've got the hot and the cold disconnected from the old water heater. And you can see I've just got my little makeshift cap. There was a little bit of water that ran out, but not too bad. The next steps are going to be taking off this temperature pressure relief valve. And the plumber that installed this the first time around did a good job and put a union right here. So I can twist that off, keep this whole section. And since the new water heater is going back in the exact same spot, I'll be able to just have the new piece right here and then just reattach to this union. I'm also going to be taking off the vent cap here and just undoing this tape and those screws, taking this off, putting the new one on, and redoing those little things there. Quick bit of info. I realize I haven't explained this very well. The whole purpose of this temperature pressure relief valve is if this water heater gets so hot and it expands to a point where it has nowhere left to go, it'll open this valve. It's adjusted just right, and that thing will pop open and it'll allow the excess water to shoot out. Since I'm below grade, by code we're supposed to be going to the outside. We can't just go to the floor here, not to mention it would ruin everything in the basement. But in a garage, it typically just goes down to within the bottom foot of the water heater. Unfortunately, I didn't get any video footage of taking off that temperature and pressure relief valve, but it does just thread out. And also taking off that vent was very simple as well. A couple screws in the tape. Then it was a matter of getting the upright hand truck slipping it underneath the water heater, putting on a ratchet strap so it doesn't go anywhere, and then hauling it up the stairs. The best part. By the way, I don't recommend doing this by yourself like I did. It was a pain. If there's somebody that can lend a hand, by all means, bring them on board. For ratchet straps. I remember thinking to myself, thank God this is the old one. Once I got this old clunker out of the way, getting the new one in was more or less just reversing the steps. So bringing the new one down on a hand truck, getting it in position, and then starting to reassemble everything. So once this gets set back in place, a couple things I had to take into consideration. I wanted it as tight as possible to where my straps were located so that it would be a tight fit with it full of water and back here against where the straps are attached. Also, I had to consider how the rigid copper was reattaching to the new temperature pressure relief valve. So I had to put Teflon tape on the threads here, spin it down in there, and then adjust the final angle and also twist the water heater a little bit so that the two could line up directly with each other. So that took just a little bit of finagling to get those two to line up so that I didn't have to alter the existing copper in any way. Also putting the vent so that it's obviously directly in line with the water heater. So I moved it to the exact same position it was before so that that lines up, because these little tabs on the vent go into little notches that are put there by the manufacturer. So there's a total of 4 little notches that it sits into. So after taking those things into consideration, the order I assembled it in was the temperature pressure relief first, got that all attached, and then I did the vent second because it's kind of in the way of the water lines. So I reassembled all that. And one thing to note, the tape that you use is important. It's a high temperature coming out that vent right there, and so just regular off-the-shelf tape typically doesn't work. So you need to make sure that it's a tape that works. So I looked up the UL listings, and this 324A premium foil by Nashua is actually sold at most Home Depots, and that does go up to 300 some degrees. So it is rated for this application. So I used that once I put some screws in here going around between this fitting and the vent pipe, and then use that tape over the top to seal it. And then once that's in place, I hooked up the water lines again for the hot and the cold, make sure those were tightened down, and then also did the gas line next. So I reassembled all those parts that I had saved and got that all hooked up. I did not turn that on until I got the water heater all the way full, because you don't want to be heating up an empty tank, obviously. So before I turned the gas on, I got it all the way back in there, but I did not put the seismic straps on until the tank was completely full, because if it's not perfectly level, I want it to sit tight on the ground and have the ground take the weight rather than the straps. So I went ahead and turned on the cold, and when I did that, I went upstairs first and opened up the hot side so that it would be taking all that air out of the hot lines so that it could fill back up with water. Because if you can imagine, once I open the hot sides upstairs and I open the cold, it's going to fill this tank, and it's pushing out all the air that's left in the tank. So that air will go up the hot line, and you'll hear it coming out on all the hot sides, and eventually water will start coming out the hot. That way you can kind of bleed out all the air on the hot sides and then turn them off. Obviously you won't have any hot water coming out, but it'll get the air out. So once I've filled it with water, then I put the straps on, tighten those down, and then went through the process per the manufacturer of starting up the gas. So one thing I did do, you get a little bit of air sometimes in the gas, so before I attached it right here, I held it out and just turned this on until I smelled just this faintest bit of gas. So I made sure that I had gas up to here and then attached it at that point, so that I'm not pumping a bunch of air through while I'm trying to start it with the pilot light. Hopefully that all makes sense, but it's very doable. Just kind of go step by step and you'll be able to do it. Good luck. Thanks.